What happens when a small-town fighter steps into a billionaire's playground? Lila Bennett's about to show you, and it's gonna blow your mind. She's armed with nothing but a beat-up satchel and a backbone of steel. He's got an empire, lawyers, and a smirk that says he's untouchable. But by the end of this, only one walks out a winner. Buckle up, this underdog's about to flip the script in a way you'll never forget. The 60th floor of Sterling Enterprises wasn't just an office. It was a fortress of money and muscle. Imagine walls of glass framing Chicago's steel giants, sunlight bouncing off Lake Michigan like it's on payroll. The oak desk, big enough to land a plane on, stacked with blueprints and contracts thicker than a phone book. Leather chairs circled it, each one costing more than a year's rent in Elmwood. Over by the wall, crystal decanters of whiskey winked in the light, rich, golden, and off-limits to anyone who didn't bleed green. The air, thick with cigar smoke and cologne so sharp it could cut glass. This was Victor Sterling's kingdom, and he ruled it with a grin that said he'd never lost a fight in his life. Lila Bennett didn't belong in this world of suits and skyscrapers, and that's exactly why she was dangerous. 32, with auburn hair yanked into a ponytail and a navy blazer that had seen better days, she looked like she'd wandered in from a PTA meeting, but her hazel eyes, they burned with a fire that could melt steel. She was a community organizer, think late nights knocking on doors, rallying folks who'd been kicked around too long, turning whispers into a roar that rattled City Hall. Her satchel? Beat to hell, but it held the kind of ammo that could sink ships. Across the desk, Victor Sterling sized her up like she was a bug he'd squash later. Late 50s, jaw like a slab of granite, suit that cost more than her car. He'd built his empire by bulldozing anything, or anyone, in his way. His execs, 3 yes men in pinstripes, smirking like they'd already won. Paul, the CFO, with slicked back hair and a sneer. Richard, the COO, whose tie screamed midlife crisis. And James, the lawyer, scribbling notes like he was grading her funeral. They thought Lila was a joke, a speed bump on their road to riches. They had no clue she was about to flip their world upside down. Lila squared her shoulders and cut through the silence like a knife. Mr. Sterling, thanks for the time. I'm here about Elmwood, the project that's about to bulldoze 500 families' homes. Her voice was steady, no nonsense, like she was calling out a playground bully. Victor didn't even let her finish. He snorted, flicking his hand like she was a fly. Spare me the sob story, Miss Bennett. This is business, real progress. Luxury condos, high-end shops, jobs that'll pump millions into Chicago. You want me to coddle a bunch of squatters? His execs chuckled, a low, ugly sound that crawled up the walls. Lila's jaw clenched, but she didn't blink. Those squatters are people, workers, grandparents, kids who've called Elmwood home for decades. Your plan kicks them out with nothing, no safety net, just rubble. You're torching a community for a quick buck. Victor leaned in, his grin sharp as broken glass. That's not my problem, sweetheart. Money talks, and I'm fluent. Maybe stick to your little protests and let the grown-ups handle the real decisions. The laughter hit again, louder, like they were sharpening knives. Lila's eyes narrowed, but she didn't flinch. She'd faced down worse. Slumlords who let pipes rot, council members who'd sell their souls for a steak dinner, crowds ready to chuck bricks instead of listen. Victor was just a louder version of the same old song. I've got proof, she said, yanking a stack of papers from her bag and slamming it on the desk so hard James jumped like he'd been zapped. The pages spilled out, charts, maps, letters scrawled in crayon and ink. Your project's breaking zoning laws, dodging environmental regs, and ignoring a city-mandated impact study. You're betting on speed, not safety, and it's gonna blow up in your face. Victor's smirk twitched, but he leaned back, scoffing. Paper doesn't scare me, darling. I've got lawyers who'd turn that into confetti by lunch. You think you're the first to try this? Lila stepped closer, her shadow creeping over the desk. Maybe not, but you don't own the streets. People are watching. Protests are kicking off downstairs right now. I've got 10,000 signatures begging you to stop, and that's just since Monday. She whipped out her phone, tapped it, and shoved it in his face. A live stream of Elmwood residents marching, signs waving like war banners. Save our homes. Sterling's done. The execs squirmed, their grins melting. Paul's arms dropped, fingers drumming nervously. Richard's tie choked him, his throat bobbing. James quit scribbling, staring at the screen like it might bite. Victor's voice turned jagged. A few loudmouths with posters don't move the needle. This deal's locked. Ground breaks next month. Get lost before I have you tossed out with that junky bag. He shot up, looming over her, his bulk blotting out the light. Out! Now! The room went dead quiet, the air buzzing like a busted wire. Paul's smirk sneaked back, smelling blood. Richard leaned forward, ready for the kill. James scratched away, pen loud as a gunshot, but Lila didn't budge. She planted her feet like a tree, her voice slicing through. Hold up, Sterling. You haven't seen the half of it, and you're gonna hate the rest. Lila reached into her satchel one last time, pulling out a tablet like she was drawing a loaded gun. She tapped it, and a video blasted onto the wall behind Victor's desk. Drone footage rolled. Elmwood's quiet streets, kids scribbling chalk on the sidewalk, then Sterling's sight, cranes frozen, dust swirling like bad karma. A voice cut in, calm but brutal, a whistleblower, one of Victor's own engineers. The foundation's a joke, it said, every word a sledgehammer. Rushed permits, cheap concrete, corners cut to save a dime. Build this, and it'll crash in 5 years. People could die. Silence hit like a freight train. Victor's face went white, his fists balling up so tight his knuckles cracked. His eyes bounced from the screen to Lila, like he could make it disappear. She didn't stop. This dropped an hour ago, 50,000 views and climbing. Channel 7's running it tonight. Your investors are losing it. She flipped the tablet. Live feed of protesters outside, hundreds strong, shouting, "Shut it down!" And "Lila! Lila!" like a battle cry shaking the glass. Paul's phone hit the floor, his jaw slack. Richard's breath hitched, hands shaking. James's pen froze, glasses fogging as he blinked hard. The execs erupted. Who leaked this? How'd she get it? We're screwed. Victor glared at Lila, shock twisting into fury. You set me up, he snarled, voice low and mean. Lila's smile was sharp as a razor. Nope, you did that yourself. Years of screwing people, thinking they'd stay quiet. I just flipped the switch. She stepped forward, her small frame filling the room like a giant. And here's the kicker. I've got lawyers, green groups, and half the city council ready to sue you into the ground unless you kill this project now. Your call. Victor flopped back into his chair, the leather groaning like it felt his defeat. The fire in him fizzled out, leaving a guy who looked small, old, like someone had sucked the air out of him. His eyes darted, Paul fumbling his phone, Richard swearing under his breath, James flipping pages like he could lawyer his way out. The execs buzzed like bees in a busted hive. We can spin it. Call PR. She's gotta be bluffing. Victor lifted a hand, shutting them up cold. All right, he rasped, voice scraped raw. We'll hold off. Look at your stupid reports. Lila gave a nod, steady as a rock. Smart move, she said, sliding a folder across the desk like she was dealing a full house. Here's the deal. Affordable units, community say-so, real oversight. I want your answer by Friday. Victor's jaw locked, a twitch rippling his cheek, but he didn't push back. He grabbed the folder, fingers brushing it like it might burn. You're a real pain, Bennett, he growled, half pissed, half impressed. You too, Sterling, she fired back, eyes steady. I just fight for something worth a damn, and I sleep like a baby. She packed her satchel slow, every move a quiet flex. As she headed out, the exec sat there, jaws tight, smugness swapped for shock. She hit the elevator, doors chiming shut like a gavel. Outside, the crowd lost it as she stepped into the dusk, hundreds cheering, signs bouncing, fists up like they just won the Super Bowl. Lila! Lila! They hollered, the sound slamming off the building like thunder. She waved once, quick and real, her smile saying it all. A regular woman who just knocked a king off his perch, not with fists, but with guts and the truth. Lila didn't just beat Victor that day, she rewrote the rules. Sterling thought power was cash, clout, and stepping on necks. A kingdom built on keeping folks quiet. But Lila proved it's not about the size of your wallet or your corner office. It's about guts, standing tall when the room wants you to shrink, fighting for what's right when the deck's stacked, caring about the people everyone else forgets. She turned the tables on a guy who thought he was bulletproof, showing that one voice, stubborn and loud, can topple a giant. It's a wake-up call for all of us. We've all got our victors, bosses, bullies, systems that say we don't count. Lila says we do, so what's your fight? When did you stare down the big guy and say, not today? The world doesn't shift with quiet. It moves with people like her, like you, who've got the heart to push back and the soul to roar. If Lila's story got you fired up, don't let it fizzle. Hit subscribe and stick with us. We've got more like this, real people, big wins, stories that hit you right in the chest. Drop your own moment in the comments. When did you flip the script, stand up, or shove back at someone who counted you out? Let's make a crew of folks who don't just watch, but do. Share this with a buddy, a coworker, anyone who needs a spark to find their voice. Click around for more. Together we can shake things up, just like Lila. Victor opened his mouth to snap back, but Lila held up a finger, cool as you please. Wait, she said, fishing a tiny recorder from her bag. She hit play, and his voice crackled out, gruff, cocky, from some shady meeting months back. Forget the rules, it barked. Grease the right palms, ram it through. No one's stopping us. The room went graveyard quiet. Paul's phone slipped, smacking the floor. Richard's breath hitched, hands shaking. James yanked his glasses off, wiping sweat like he could scrub the words away. Victor lunged, swiping for it, but Lila pulled back, eyes blazing. This is my backup, she said. It's online already. Safe with folks who'll drop it if I don't walk out whole. Victor's hand froze, then fell, trembling. You're full of it, he hissed, but it sounded desperate. Lila tilted her head, smirking faint. Sure about that? You've got 5 minutes, scrap it, or this hits every newsroom by dawn. The video looped, cranes, dust, the whistleblower's truth, but Lila wasn't done. She tapped her tablet again, and bam, emails lit up the screen. Internal dirt, bribes to city hacks. You thought you'd bury this, she said, voice climbing. I dug it out. Every shady deal, every dollar slipped under the table. Your castle's crumbling, Sterling. Victor stumbled back, chair screeching. How? He choked, but she steamrolled him. Your own people talked, fed up with your crap. I just listened. She pointed at the feed. Protesters hitting 1,000, signs everywhere. And they're with me. The execs lost it. Kill it. Call the board. She's got us cold, Murray, Victor roared. Shut up. He faced Lila, fury and fear tangled up. What's your price? All of it, she said, smooth as silk. Stop the build, fix Elmwood, own your mess, or watch it burn. Victor's shoulders sagged, his swagger gone like smoke. He stared at the folder, then Lila, eyes flickering with hate in a sliver of respect. You think this is over? He muttered, barely audible. Lila's smile was soft, steel underneath. It's not about endings. It's about doing right. You can crush houses, but not facts. She turned, leaving the folder like a loaded gun. The elevator dinged shut, and she caught Victor's last look, his empire shrinking, his throne just a chair in a big empty room. Before the big flip, Lila had the streets buzzing. She'd spent weeks in Elmwood, coffee-stained diners, stoops with sagging steps, listening to folks Victor ignored. Maria, a grandma who'd raised 3 kids there, handed her a letter, hands shaking. He can't take this, she said. Jamal, a mechanic, sketched maps of the site, pointing out cracks Sterling's crew missed. They weren't just names on a petition. They were her army, and they'd armed her with stories, proof, a fire that wouldn't quit. She walked into that office carrying their weight, their trust, and she wasn't about to let them down. After Lila's exit, the office turned into a zoo. Paul paced, yelling into his phone. We need damage control. Richard ripped his tie off, muttering about stock prices tanking. James rifled through the folder, sweat beading, looking for a loophole. Victor just sat there, staring out at the skyline like it might save him. His phone buzzed, investors bailing, lawyers freaking out. The empire he'd built on quick cash and loud threats was cracking, and for once, he didn't have a slick comeback. Lila hadn't just won, she'd left him picking up pieces he didn't know how to fit back together. Lila wasn't some random do-gooder. She'd grown up in a place like Elmwood, a scrappy block where folks patched roofs together and shared meals when paychecks ran thin. Her mom worked doubles at a factory. Her dad drove a bus. When developers swept in, promising progress, they'd left her street a ghost town. She'd watched it happen, powerless then, but not now. Every step in that office was for her old neighbors, for Elmwood, for every kid who deserved a shot. That's why she didn't blink at Victor's bluster. She'd seen his kind before, and she knew how to make them break. While Lila faced off inside, the streets were alive. Protesters packed the block, moms with strollers, old guys with canes, teens with megaphones. Signs bobbed. Elmwood stays. No more lies. A kid with a buzz cut climbed a light pole, waving a flag that read, "Lila's got this." Cops hovered, but the vibe wasn't chaos. It was electric, a wall of noise and hope slamming against Sterling's fortress. They didn't know the half of it yet, but they felt it. Something big was shifting, and they were the muscle behind her words. Lila's win wasn't just hers, it rippled. Elmwood got a breather, sure, but it was bigger than that. She showed that power's not about who yells loudest or pays the most. It's about who's got the guts to stand when it's easier to run. Victor learned the hard way. Underestimate the little guy and you're toast. So where's your line? That moment you said enough and pushed back? Lila's proof it matters. Every step, every shout, every time you refuse to bow. That's how the world bends.